Coming up, it is officially time to put all of our focus onto the New York Football Giants beating the Houston Texans coming out of the bye week at home. Critical game on the schedule. How can they attack this defense? Should the Giants be looking past the opponents over the next 2 weeks? And will one Kenny Golladay play a factor on Sunday? Yes, friends, it's OGP, the One Giant Podcast, where, of course, we are your host over here, Adam Arbrett, breaking down the Brooklyn Nets resurging over on the One Giant Podcast that we're on now, but Locked On Nets, that's where you'd find me and my boy Doug Norrie. Here on OGP is where you see my co-host sitting right there for you. That's Andy Makowitz. He is the healthy, wealthy, and wise season generational ticket holder. How we doing, sir, on a Thursday?
I am excited for the Giants to get back to business, Adam. I'm feeling good. Obviously, Giants coming off the bye week have had a lot of time to prepare for the juggernaut that is the Houston Texans this weekend.
Hey, listen, man, we're going to talk about them coming up here in a second. Like, the one thing I don't think you ever want to do is look at records or, just make these assumptions. Hey, the Texans are bad. They maybe we're going to trade Cooks, couldn't get rid of him. The quarterback play hasn't been good from Davis Mills, like all that stuff. Great. Guess what? You still got to go out. You still have to play the games. And I'm going to reference Philadelphia here. That matchup was not as cut and dry, bury the Texans by a very strong Eagles team. So we'll talk about that come up here in a second. But obviously, a couple of news and notes on the injury front and guys that can be contributors. We already know Xavier McKinney out, had to have surgery on 2 fingers there that have broken bones in them. They're saying 4 weeks, some chance he could return at some point this season. Dane Belton, Julian Love stepping up in his absence. The other little note before we get to Kenny Golladay is just that Daniel Bellinger was back in the facility, had to put a metal plate inside around his eye. And while that sounds intense, and I'm sure it was, he said that the pain has subsided. It's now just about recovery and healing. He still has some blurred vision. Not expecting him back anytime immediately. But unlike in the moment, Daniel Bellinger should return at some point this season for Big Blue.
Yeah, you really hope to see him come back. Hearing the details is pretty scary. Like, we heard it was a freak. Daniel Bellinger even came out and said it's a freak 1 in a million accident that happened to me. Like, it never happens to anyone. The guy's trying to punch the ball out and he gets struck in the face. Like, the odds of that are just astronomical. What Daniel Bellinger did come out and say, Adam, is that he will wear a visor moving forward to just completely eliminate the opportunity for that to happen again. Also, just in case someone gets their hand in there, not necessarily to punch it, but you just don't want people getting all up in your grill anyway, right?
Yeah, I don't want to. Get your fingers away from my mouth. I hope he should wear a Justin Tuck type, face guard there as well. Make it impenetrable fortress there, and then probably also get heat stroke in the warmer games, suffocating yourself a little bit. So that's good to know. It's good to just hear that he's on the mend there. Kenny Golladay becomes the man, the myth, the legend, the frustrating piece, quite frankly, for the New York Football Giants. We talk about it all the time. Sometimes you get caught up in the price tag, so you just try to think about, is this guy contributing? It doesn't matter to what level. Well, unfortunately, take away the money. Kenny also hasn't been on the field contributing. It looks like he's ready to get back out there on Sunday. He's going to play. What does he need to do for you? We talked about this a little bit, previously on the podcast, but what does he need to do for you on Sunday to feel like, hey, this is value, this is contributing, this is a guy that can be a part of what we're trying to do here in the second half?
Well, Kenny Golladay already showed that he probably does not care at all about what my opinion is, because they asked him, what does he need to show the coaches? And he said, I don't have to show the coaches anything on Sunday. And it was like, weird flex, but okay, I get it. And he said, I only need to show up and show out for my teammates. Gave kind of one of those answers. Adam said he has to put in the work and do all the things during the week. But then,
yeah, it's just such a stupid thing. And I'm mostly positive on Kenny's return. I mostly am fine with him. But why would you compartmentalize it? I'm here for my teammates. I'm not here for the coaches. It's just such an odd.
The coaches need to see me work hard in practice during the week, but on Sunday, it's not about the coaches. It's going out and playing for the players, even though the coaches put me on the field and the coaches help call the plays. Whatever. You could tell that he's trying to like be smart and coy about the answer. The simple answer is he has to show that he can be a productive member of this team moving forward. And we mentioned it before. I'm not expecting him to go out and get 12 targets and catch 7 balls for 110 yards. And it's the resurgence of Kenny Golladay circa 2019. What I think is reasonable expectations is catch a handful of balls, contribute to this team, contribute in a victory against the Texans. And if you can take snaps away from some of the guys that are basically practice squad players, if you can elevate the wide receiving core just a little bit, Adam, that's really all I'm expecting from him in this game.
Yeah, listen, you could have 3 catches for 38 yards and 2 to 3 first downs inside of that, and that's more than enough, right? When we talk about this team, and this is about the Houston Texans game in every game, but we want Wan'Dale Robinson to have more space to operate and be a little more explosive. Even though we've liked some of the consistent games that Darius Slayton has had, we also want him to stretch the field and use his speed and use that consistent size, right? Get the 50 balls up there and up to Slayton to make those plays. Kenny, I need you to, it's funny, 2 very different versions of how you get there. I need you to do what Sterling Shepard was doing to start the year, right? Be a chain mover, be a reliable resource for Daniel Jones, and on the key plays, show up and make that play for your quarterback, for the team. We saw this. Darius Slayton only had 1 catch a couple weeks ago. It was for a critical 3rd down conversion, right? So the stat lines don't matter. It's just do you show up in those key moments? Because as we talked about with some of the lesser players on this roster, David Sills, listen, we love it. You're showing up in practice. They're giving you the reps. Then what we need you to do is just make that 1 key catch when it matters most. Because inside of this offense and inside the passing game, it's primarily you may only get 2 or 3 looks because we're not throwing the ball a ton. So when they come, if it goes off your hands at the goal line, like with Marcus Johnson, right, you're going to catch some ire because these moments are critical for the Giants.
And we see that Daniel Jones isn't throwing 40 passes a game, Adam. That's the point. It's like they're not going to spread it around and everyone's going to get 5 to 7 catches. It's like you'll be lucky to get 5 targets in the game because the Giants have found that the recipe for success is not to continue to air the ball out, but take the air out of the ball and run it with Saquon Barkley and Daniel Jones.
Yeah. And it's interesting, too, because when we talk about this matchup specifically here, I'll highlight some things on the Houston side of it. But when we're looking at the New York Football Giants, it's very easy to look at this game, I think, and say, here is an opportunity. Favored by 6, so you're +3 on a neutral site, 6.5, depending on where the lines move. We'll cover that later in predictions. But the idea that it's the Houston Texans, go out and blow a team out. Well, the Giants don't blow teams out. Like, it's like the game script of this season has never been, but given the opportunity, watch out. There's been bad defenses that they've played against. They have not tried to overexpose themselves. And you mentioned about Saquon Barkley. Like, I think I'll be interested to get your take here because I've called for it sometimes. I do want to see the playbook expand, and maybe Kenny Galladay's presence helps that a little bit. But to this point, the recipe for success has been heavy doses of Saquon Barkley, controlling the game clock, timely plays from the defense. So I can't sit here and tell you the Giants should be putting up 3-4 touchdowns and field goals in this game. That's just not the way the game script is going to go for the Giants potentially, or for the Houston Texans who have a stud running back on the field.
Yeah, the game script is going to be the most fascinating part of this, Adam, because we obviously know what both teams want to do. And it's like, who can get to the spot first, right? Like we know that Davis Mills has struggled this year. They thought they may have their quarterback of the future. It doesn't seem like we've seen
and quick pause here. Let's not, because I do it myself to Daniel Jones. We do it to a lot of people, and this doesn't matter. But Davis Mills may be a franchise quarterback, right? We're learning a lot around the league this year specifically about how judging guys, ahead of schedule here, sometimes we come back and we go, maybe 2-3 years down the road, it looks different, right? But point being, he's struggling this year, which is good for us.
He is. It is year 2. They wanted to see him evolve in his play, and they just haven't seen it yet. Look at Justin Fields, right? Year 1, Justin Fields kind of struggled. It's year 2, and now he's emerging, utilizing different skill sets and weapons that he has. Listen, there's no getting around it. Davis Mills is 30th in total QBR for quarterbacks. He is just in front of Baker Mayfield, Mac Jones, and is just behind guys like Russell Wilson and Carson Wentz. So a lot of those guys have already been benched. That's the area that he's living in. It's not an indictment on Davis Mills, the player. It's just saying he is not performing as well, maybe because the team is not performing that well, right?
No, 100%. Right. Chicken or the egg, as we say. So, in some ways, for different reasons, not comparing how successful the quarterbacks have been, but in some ways, predicated on what the offense is capable of, both teams are going to be running back driven, right? They're going to be running back heavy in this one. And I mentioned this matchup here because I'll just tell you right now, like this is the only matchup that matters. What they do against Dameon Pierce and how they try to control him and the running game, that's going to determine what this game looks like and whether or not it's closer, or could it be a slow build for the New York Football Giants on the scoreboard until you look up, and it's not going to be in the 30s, but maybe you still have that 2-touchdown lead over top of the Texans. He's a guy, like, you think about some of those next gen stats we talk about. He spends a lot of time behind the line of scrimmage. Now, so does Kenneth Walker for Seattle. The Giants held up against him in a losing effort, but I wonder if, when you are a rookie running back, and we saw this from Saquon early in his career, you want to make the extra play, the extra move, right? It means that the offensive line is capable of being beaten, and it's going to come down to how that front seven defends against Pierce in that running game. If you shut that down, unlike against Geno Smith, you feel a lot more confident in saying, ball in the hands of Davis Webb. Can he make the key throws that you need to? I have a key player defensively that I think is going to be a big factor when it comes to stopping Dameon Pierce. Is there anybody else, though, when we just talk about the offensive side of the ball? I mean, Cooks, maybe, obviously, but do you have any other areas of concern, honestly, when you look at this team in Houston?
No, it's all about Dameon Pierce. We saw what good backfields can do to the Giants. The Giants are not great against the run. They're obviously better against the pass. A lot has to do with the way that Wink Martindale schemes things up. But Dameon Pierce is a legitimate number one running back. Like, he looks great. He looks young. He looks fresh. He's bouncing off people. Yards after contact looks great. And when you look at some of the advanced metrics for Dameon Pierce, he's averaging 4.6 yards a carry around an offense that really doesn't have much outside of him. Right. So,
it's funny. Yeah, middle of the road in terms of like average yards per carry. Right. But when you're doing it with relatively no help, it's actually more impressive.
Exactly. And so for me, on the offensive side of the ball, it is going to be all about how the Giants can stop Dameon Pierce. We mentioned it about Davis Mills struggling this season. It has not looked good through the air. Passing, they're behind in almost every game, Adam, and their passing yards per game is 188 passing yards per game, which is bottom 6 in the entire league. So they're not being able to throw the ball with Davis Mills, and they're always behind in every single one of these games, and Dameon Pierce is having to carry the load. So for me, it's all about stacking the box and challenging them to throw the ball vertically with Davis Mills.
Yeah, I think so. And again, you mentioned 188. I want to pull up here just where we stand for the New York Football Giants. Now, obviously, a much different factor is the use of Daniel Jones' legs and what they're capable of doing in a totality offensively. But when we talk about, you said 188 there. Well, where's that put the New York Football Giants? Giants are having 159 yards passing through the air per game, right? So, again, it comes down to Saquon Barkley and dictating tempo, Daniel Jones with his legs as well, but it's going to be about holding that pace there. The reason why, so I'm just going to tell you, man, let me mention, I think the key guy to me, because there's a lot of guys we can think about on the defensive side to help slow down this running game and force that ball into Davis Mills' hands, as you said. Jihad Ward has to be the guy to me, because he's the dude that has proven as a veteran capable of both stuffing that running game and then also working out in space on the edge. I just think that his instincts, his football acumen is what's helped him be in the right positions more often than not. We can talk about Jalen Smith and he clogs lanes. I think that matters as well. But if I'm just looking in the absence of Azeez Ojulari, right, and Ocean Ximenez dealing with injuries, you have Kayvon Thibodeau. Let him go get the pressure. But I think Ward is going to be critical in, are you getting yourself in those right spots so that the dancing behind the line for Pierce doesn't turn into 5 and 6 yard gains. It ends up being for loss. It ends up being for 1 or 2 yards, and maintain that third and long distance where you can really take advantage of Mills.
Yeah, it makes sense to look at Ward. Obviously, the defensive line is going to be the first stop to be able to make sure that he can't get to the second level. I'm looking actually directly at Julian Love, knowing that he has a huge new role on this team. You know, having the green dot, being the play caller, the signal caller, he is basically captaining this offense, this defense. He has not done this before for the Giants, as far as I know. And the other piece of it is, this is a lot of responsibility that's been heaped on him in a very short period of time. Before, they were saying, here's what you need to go do, worry about yourself. Now they're saying you need to understand, like, circumstance, time, down and distance, even more to be able to effectively call the plays and audible out of them to put the Giants defense in the best positions for success. So for me, it's all about Julian Love and how he's going to be able to see the field and respond to all of this responsibility.
Yeah, I'm sure. Honestly, if you asked me this question preseason, say he's going to wear the green dot, I would have had a lot of questions. I don't have the same level of questions now that he's been in this system with Wink. He's been proving it. He's a leader. He's a captain on the team. Do I expect it to be, could there be some different wrinkles or just the lacking another weapon on defense in Xavier McKinney? Of course, that's going to impact it, but I'm pretty confident in how football smart Julian Love is. Probably, how smart he is. I don't have to qualify for football, but how smart he is and capable of stepping into this role. Remember, we've heard over the course of the season that in practice, the Giants have designed intentional situations where they pull out the starters and throw in backups and create rotations. And that, at least if we've seen, has been accredited in the ability for, when injuries have come up, guys to step in and know what they need to do. You think back to the last couple of seasons where the starter went down. I mean, listen, sometimes even with the starters in there, it was total chaos, right? Guys very much playing their own roles, but not playing in conjunction with one another. We haven't seen a lot of that this year. So obviously critical. I'm just optimistic that Julian Love kind of steps in there somewhat seamlessly and takes on that role and then allows Dane Belton to be the versatile weapon that's getting thrown all over the defense.
On the offensive side of the ball for the Giants, Adam, this is all about Saquon Barkley. And we say that constantly, and you're like, yes, I know he's our greatest player. He has 35% usage rate. Like, we know this, Andy. But what you don't know, Adam, is the Houston Texans are dead last in almost every single rush defense metric that you can throw out there. The teams average 180 yards a game on the ground against them. That is literally worst in the league. Opponents run it 33 times. That is the most in the league per game against them. Even with this heavy volume, they're giving up 5.5 yards per carry. Adam, that is like a crazy number. 5.5 yards per carry. That is good for 30th in the league. So they're giving up a heavy volume. They're also giving up average yard per clip. That's a very high number. This is going to be all about the Giants' the offensive line being able to run block effectively and be able to spring Saquon Barkley when necessary.
And how are you feeling about the fact that it looks like it's going to be Josh Azuda who gets the start at left guard here, filling in? We know Shane Lemieux is on his way back. By all indications, Nick Gates right now is going to be this serviceable backup ready to hop in there. I wouldn't be shocked if we see him for a couple of key, critical moments, maybe a couple of pass protection opportunities if it really matters most. Especially, I think you get a little bit of opportunity here. 3rd and 7s, third and longs, you don't want to be in those. But if you are in them and the defense knows you have to pass, well, then you can give away the secret, right? And you could maybe put in Nick Gates to help in that pass protection a little bit if we feel like the consistency is there. You surprised at all, though? I mean, Azuda has struggled a little bit, but he is the, the pick of this regime. So while he was a later round pick, mid-round pick, you think they drafted him. They have the confidence that he can do it. And they've been pretty complimentary about how he's worked on the passing side of his protection over the course of the year in practice.
Yeah, I think Azudu, I'm expecting to see him out there. I'm expecting to see probably a rotation, quite frankly. Adam, you talked about Nick Gates being in there for a couple reps. Tyree Phillips is still the backup to Evan Neal, but he may be in there based on how large he is and how big he actually plays. Yeah, I'm a little bit. I want to see where he is at in his progression. Obviously drafted by Joe Schoen in this regime. So you feel like they're going to give him every opportunity to succeed. In knowing how the Houston Texans cannot stop the run, I expect the Giants to go with heavy, heavy packages at him. Like, I could see Nick Gates being in at tight end at some point. I could see the 2 tight end sets with Myrick and Tanner Hudson quite a bit. You could see a fullback in the backfield and Myrick being able to get lanes. They may only have one wide receiver out there at times because the Giants want to dictate how this game will go. So I expect there to be a heavy dose of Saquon Barkley. He has to get 20 plus touches in this game for the Giants to be effective.
Yeah, still surprised we haven't seen him in the passing game as much. I mean, and again, we understand the game scripts that they're putting together here. It's about more wins than losses. So whatever process gets the right result is fine. But you'd think if you want to manufacture some of that passing attack, just getting into Saquon's hands and letting him work. But a lot of those screen setups haven't quite gone according to plan. A couple of games where Mike Kafka, I think, very smartly after the first drive, trying to do some of that, went, okay, not going to be our bread and butter today. Let's move on from it. This is a tighter episode, by the way. We shout out everybody in on the live YouTube. Tomorrow, we're going to have a special guest, bit of a crossover with another Giants content creator. He and I will continue looking at this matchup here. And that's why at this moment, we're going to go ahead and turn it over to the prediction section. A little bit of fantasy nuggets in there potentially. But as we all know, it's time for Andy's Bet of the Week.
Adam, I'm seeing the board pretty well. I think I'm 3-0 in my bets of the week recently. So I'm feeling pretty good about where things stand.
Yes, sir.
So this one is going to be pretty simple, pretty easy for people to get. Look, the Giants are coming off a bye week. They've had time to scheme up everything that they need to do against a porous Texans rush defense. I expect the Giants to come out flying all over the field. Excited, home crowd's going to be into it. I think they're going to jump on the Texans early. I think it's not going to be like one of those drag them out games that we're so accustomed to where the Giants are in the fourth quarter trailing. I expect them to be able to move the ball more effectively early than the Texans can. So for me, the best bet on the board is taking the New York Giants first half -2.5. The question is, will the Giants be up by a field goal at the end of the half? My direct answer to you is absolutely.
Yeah, I don't think there's any reason not to assume that. To your point, you're at home. Nice sustained opening drive, put points on the board. Ideally, a rushing touchdown for Saquon Barkley, right? Like I don't understand. I can't imagine a world where we've talked about what has been a consistent game script for the Giants a lot of the season, trailing at halftime. Well, I'll tell you right now, if the New York Football Giants are trailing the Houston Texans at halftime, that is a very concerning sign. Not, in the grand scheme of things, but I do think certain opponents you want to get away from, hey, consistent play, trust the game script, and it'll all work out in the end. It's all well and good, but you'd say you can always come back on the Texans, right? Okay, then why are you trailing him in the first place? So I think betting that with confidence is kind of like it's critical to saying that the Giants can get this thing done and do it without stress. I think that that's a good way to look at this game. I want the Giants to be up 13-6 at halftime, right? Maybe coming out and getting possession to start the second half and looking to put on one more touchdown and really make it hard on Davis Mills and that offense for the Texans. And for that reason, I don't know where the number is, Andy. Maybe you've got it up there in the background. Whatever it is for the Giants defense to get a turnover in this game, that's going to be something that I'd be looking for here, because I do think there's going to come at some point, you're going to have Davis Mills take a couple of looks, try to go for a couple of shots, and the Giants defense the last couple of weeks heading into that bye, we're starting to get some pressure, starting to force some turnovers. I wouldn't be shocked. I like the idea of like a Kayvon Thibodeau forced fumble in this one.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. Davis Mills also has 8 interceptions on the year, so he's averaging a pick a game, never mind the other turnovers that they have. So I agree with you. That's probably a good bet. They don't have it listed on FanDuel right now, which they'll probably do closer to game time once they know exactly who's going to be out on the field.
Yes, sir.
But Adam, hit me with your prediction for the game.
Yeah, where are we at right now on the line? It started at 6, moved to 6.5. Has it fallen back down to 6 again there?
It's fallen down to 5.5, actually.
Ooh, 5. Okay, so 5.5. I mean, listen, either you believe the Giants can win by a touchdown or you don't, right? I mean, that's all it comes down to here. You want to lay the points. It just means you're confident that the Giants are going to win this one going away. I would lay the points. Like, I would take the Giants. I would lay the points. You said you've been very successful in your betting. I've been very successful in predicting these games week in and week out. I believe I'm on a 4-game win streak here in spite of the Giants' loss against the Seahawks. What is the over-under there for me, Andy?
The over-under is 40.5.
40.5. Hoodalati. Give me the under in this one. Give me the New York Football Giants in this one. Like I said, I'd lay the points. I believe you allow it to dictate tempo. I'm not going to be shocked if the Houston Texans are in this game going late into the fourth quarter, because you have Pierce. You've been capable of having a successful running game. And I'll just point out one thing here when we talk about the Houston Texans and just where they're coming into this game. I go back and I just remember, and I think I said it at the top there, I go back and I look at that last game when they played against the Philadelphia Eagles, and you go and you see the box score and you say 29-17. It's not even a game. They just kind of milked their way towards the end. Well, you got to realize that game at one point was only, I believe, because they put up a 2-point conversion in the fourth quarter. Like, it was right there to be had for the Texans in the third going into the fourth. It's a 1-possession game in the fourth quarter against an undefeated, incredibly talented Philadelphia Eagles team. So just a reality, right? You have to accept the fact that a 6-1 Houston Texans team, who, by the way, is certainly had their struggles away from their home confines in terms of production and effectiveness, this game can't get away from it. It's not going to get away. You're not going to blow them out. I'm going to tell you that right now. If I'm taking the under, I'm going to put this one at 24-13 New York Football Giants. Just a hair underneath that 40.5 over-under mark. They'll control the game, but this could be about midway through the fourth quarter, Giants getting that field goal, getting that touchdown, and then forcing the issue. And that's where that late turnover can come into play.
I tend to agree with you with what you said, Adam. It does feel like that's going to be the trend. I mean, look at the Houston Texans games, right? They have not scored. They scored 24 points against the Chargers, and the Charger defense isn't great. Every other game, they failed to reach 20 points, right? They beat the Jaguars by scoring 13. They only scored 10 against the Texans. So, they scored 17 against the Eagles.
They had 20 early in the season with the Colts and against Chicago, in both in losing efforts, obviously. Or tie, against the Colts.
And so, they're putting up some points against some pretty bad defenses. Like the Colts haven't looked good. They put up 20 against the Raiders. They also gave up 38 points to those terrible Raiders. Mm-hmm. But for me, it just feels like it's going to be tough for them to manufacture points. Dameon Pierce, just on his skill alone, give him a touchdown, kick a couple field goals. I'm with you. I've got the New York Giants 20, the Texans 13. I'm in the same type of realm that you are, Adam. Can our offense dictate a couple of touchdowns? Can Graham Gano kick in a couple field goals and the Giants walk away with the victory?
You got to, man. I mean, listen, we talked about it. You said this the last episode. These are the critical games against Houston at home, against Detroit at home. Win these games, solidify yourself, put yourself really entrenched in that playoff picture. And if you lose one of them, it doesn't change for me the perspective on the season overall, but it does start to bring in the doubts around who have you played against this year? What have you proven to this point? And you can't afford to lose to a team that has one win, right? At this stage of the season, everyone keeps saying a lot of games to play. Okay, there's a lot of games to play, but the Giants are 6-2. Like you got 9 more games on the schedule. Like the time to act like we're not 100% sure if you can win games, completely out the door. Go out, dictate tempo, be up by 7 to 10 points consistently throughout this game, put it away late. And even though I love seeing Daniel Jones, I think, expand and show a little bit more, you got to be willing to say, however you get the wins is how you get the wins, especially at this stage of the season. I'll be back in tomorrow talking again with some crossover content. Continue to look at this. We'll dive into maybe the Houston secondary and see, could there be a couple of big plays for Daniel Jones potentially? As always, we thank you for coming in on the live session over on YouTube. There's going to be a bit of a content dump here. Had some podcast feed issues, so you can go and hear us talk about the Xavier McKinney injury, talk about some of these things leading up to this, some narratives around the team at the midway point. Be sure to check all that out. Free to get it. Free to rate and review, as it always helps us. We continue to appreciate all the support that the Giants fans have been giving us. We'll keep breaking things down here. And as Andy Makowitz would want, need, and nay, demand the people know.
As always, let's go Big Blue.